Alright, I figured since I did the Jujubee Midge, I might as well do a Flash Juju as well. It's going to be tied very similarly, obviously. It's a variation on the theme. This is, again, on a 2488 TMCO hook. I'm going to start with white 16-aught. This is TMCO. Vivus 14-aught is your next closest thing. I'm going to start this thread just about an eye length behind the hook eye and trim the tag off. And in this case, I'm going to tie a blue one. So I'm going to use 2 strands of blue Superhair and 1 strand of chartreuse. And I'm going to take all 3 strands and lay them in here against the hook and catch them on the near side with a turn and then draw them down to length. And I'm going to wrap back over these, keeping them along the side of the hook. And this is my near side, all the way back about halfway down the bend. And then I'll bring the thread forward again. And I'm trying to keep that thread as flat and smooth as I can. Right back up to where I started. Now I'm going to begin to wrap the body, and it's the same trick on all of the Juju-series flies. What I want to do is I want to come around the bend and come straight back again. And then as I come up, I'll come around and I want to reach around the hook point and back again. And these 3 strands, you can see I can kind of rock them to butt them together. They've lined up with the chartreuse in the middle, so blue, chartreuse, blue. And I'm just going to wrap these forward as one unit. You can see how close my fingers are to the hook right here. You know, it's less than a shank length away from the hook. If you keep your fingers close, that'll keep these fibers from spreading out as you wrap. And I'm going to wrap these forward about up to where I started the thread. And then I'll tie off all 3 strands. And I always want to make sure that's good and secure right there so that doesn't blow up later. I can trim those 3 out, and then I'll whip finish my white thread. Once I've whip finished my white thread, I'm going to come in and I'm going to start some 16-aught black, and I do use smaller thread on this flash version because I need a little bit more forgiveness as far as the tie down goes. So I've started some 16-aught black, and I'm going to take a dozen strands of white fluorofiber here. And so this is as per the standard Juju. I'm going to pull that down to length and anchor that down nice and smooth. Wrap back to just in front of the hook point. And at this point I'm going to tie in just a single strand of 1/100th inch Mirage Flashaboo. And this Mirage Flashaboo is the same kind of stuff that I use on so many others of my flies. The Mirage is more opalescent. It's a little bit more metallic than regular pearl tinsel. And we're going to use this for the THORAX. This is where we're going to add the flash. When I was trying to make the flash version of this, I didn't want to just do a flash back. I wanted to add a little bit more highlight to it. So I'm going to tie this in here along my near side, and I'll draw that tag in down to length. And one of the biggest tricks on this fly is you want to keep this underbody just as smooth as you can and smoothly tapered down. I don't want a big step there at the front, so you can see how I'm running this thread from front to back up that hill, and then I'll leave the thread hanging at the back. Now the thread is hanging at the back of the THORAX for a reason. I'm about to wrap this piece of flash, and if I just try to wrap it without that piece of thread in the way, it'll want to slide down this taper. But what I can do here is as I begin to wrap, you can see this flash will push the thread forward, and the thread keeps the flash turns butted together. Now sometimes you'll get some little spaces in here, and it's not a big deal. You have to remember when you're looking at this on this camera, this is blown up gigantic. So I want to try to butt those wraps as close together as I can, but if I end up with a little bit of space between them, I don't worry about it. I'm now going to take the thread around the hook because I was pushing the thread along the side of the THORAX there. And then I'll tie that flash off with a couple of turns just behind the hook eye. Usually fold that back one more time just to anchor that in, and then I can trim that flash out. So now we've got our flash THORAX built in. You can see how shiny that is. And from here we're going right back to kind of standard issue Jujubee. I'm going to pull the wing case over the top, drape my thread over it, and again I'll hold the thread up with the wing case material so that I can make sure that it's centered. I'll pull straight down on the thread, anchor that with a couple of turns. Then I'll divide my dozen strands 6 to a side and sort of roll them in my fingers. That just bundles them up a little bit. On my near side, I'm going to hold this wing bud down and catch it with a couple turns of thread so it squares up to the hook shank. On the far side, I'm going to hold it just a little bit high for the same reason, so my thread torque will pull it down. And then I want to build the thread head. And with this 10/0 thread, or 16/0 thread, you've got to make a few more turns to build that up. Then I'll whip finish over the top, clip my thread out, and I'm going to trim the legs just a touch longer than the wing case. Like so. And that is our finished Flash Juju. I don't typically use any head cement on these. The FLOURO-FIBER doesn't play well with head cement. You can do a wet whip, and that is to add some head cement to the thread. Just rub it on the thread itself. Take that down a notch to get some of that flash out of there. You can kind of see a little bit better now. You could put some head cement on the thread just before you whip finished and do a wet whip, but I honestly don't worry about it. This fly's pretty durable as is. Holds together just fine. But I don't like to put head cement on there because if it runs onto the wing case, it just sort of makes it disappear. So there's our finished Flash Juju. Twist some up, put those in your box. It's always nice to have an option.